Remember when that whole pandemic thing started happening in early 2020, and at least most of us at least tried to quarantine? After quarantine for months, we missed our friends. And so this company called Zoom said, hey, actually, we have an app for that. So we all joined Zoom, even though FaceTime was right there and let you put funny stickers on top of your face. But whatever. We joined Zoom and we started hanging out online. By the summer of 2020, I was being invited to like 10 different Zoom parties every week. And you guys, I could not handle it. Like, I wanted to see my pals and catch up and socialize. And even though now I could do it in my pajamas while watching baseball on mute in the background, somehow it was so much harder than real life socializing. I'm considered something of an extrovert, I guess. And in the before times, I could handle maybe 2 large social engagements per week, tops. Preferably not within 24 hours of each other. But a Zoom happy hour, give me 1 of those per month, tops. Okay, maybe 2 if I'm feeling particularly sociable. And so at some point, I had to start turning down opportunities to hang out with friends. And I felt so bad about it. Like, it became easier to turn down real life events. Like, sorry, I can't come to your birthday party, but I don't want to engage in an activity that will end up killing someone's grandma. But it became so much harder to turn down activities online. Like, sorry, I can't come to your Zoom birthday. I guess my modem exploded. I don't know. I honestly thought that it was just me because I know that loads of people were working from home and doing Zoom meetings all the time, especially, teachers and students who were spending entire days on teleconferencing apps. Like, surely it can't be that bad for everyone, right? Well, it turns out that actually there's data out there to suggest that yes, it is that bad and sometimes worse for a lot more people than just me. In fact, there's a new study that was published this month called The Fatiguing Effects of Camera Use in Virtual Meetings, a within-person field experiment. And it caught my eye and I started reading it and immediately noticed that they were actually building off previous studies dating back to mid-2020 that I had completely missed. I guess because I was too busy thinking about herd immunity and Fox News and Dr. Drew and whether or not 5G can cause COVID. It can't. Your basic early days of the pandemic stuff. So, time for me to catch up. In mid-2020, Microsoft researchers hooked subjects up to EEGs and made them do Zoom meetings, which is horrific. And they found that the subjects' brain waves associated with anxiety spiked about 30 to 40 minutes into the meeting, which didn't happen during in-person meetings. Throughout the rest of that year and into 2021, as work-from-home orders stayed in place around the world, several papers came out confirming that, yes, video conferencing fatigue is a real thing, and yes, it sucks ass. Even as people were spending less time in meetings overall, they were getting more and more stressed out by those meetings. At that point, researchers began wondering why this happens, and that's where things got really interesting. One study from March of this year found that turning off the microphone and having higher feelings of group belongingness are related to lower post-video conference fatigue. Additional analyses suggest that higher levels of group belongingness are the most consistent protective factor against video conference fatigue. So yeah, if you like your coworkers, you're going to have a better time. Another paper from February of 2021 argued that the cause might be nonverbal overload, identifying 4 possible factors. Excessive amounts of close-up eye gaze, which we humans usually reserve for close relationships. So it's upsetting for us to have that in non-intimate relationships. Also, cognitive load, increased self-evaluation from staring at video of oneself, and constraints on physical mobility. However, that paper was merely a well-argued opinion piece and didn't really have any hard data to back it up. But luckily, at that same time, someone was testing nearly this exact hypothesis. A group of researchers developed the Zoom exhaustion and fatigue scale, which led to them determining that Zoom meetings don't just suck in a general way that tires you out, but in 5 distinct flavors of exhaustion: general, social, emotional, visual, and motivational fatigue. Isn't that fun? They then administered their scale to 10,591 subjects and compared it with the same nonverbal mechanisms that was mentioned in that other paper from February: mirror anxiety, being physically trapped, hypergaze from a grid of staring faces, and the cognitive load from producing and interpreting nonverbal cues. They found that, yes, all of those nonverbal mechanisms explained the resulting fatigue. But they also found that women had it way worse than men. This happened in part because women were subjected to more and longer meetings. But even after controlling for that, the difference was still there. And it remained even after controlling for things like personality, because extroverts experience less fatigue than introverts; age, older people had less fatigue than younger people; context, social engagements were less fatiguing than work; and race, white people were less fatigued than other races. More on that in a minute. So why was that? When they drilled down on the data, it became clear that one nonverbal mechanism was way worse for women than it was for men: mirror anxiety. The main problem that women were having was that little window that shows you what you look like during the meeting. Women hyper-fixated on that little window, and it made them super self-conscious throughout the meeting, which is exhausting. All of which brings me to this latest study, published this month in the Journal of Applied Psychology. Psychologists decided to really dig into the role that the camera plays in Zoom fatigue, the camera that is on you, the person being fatigued. They recruited about 100 people who were working from home, and they had them spend 2 weeks keeping their cameras on throughout every meeting they had, and then 2 weeks keeping their cameras off. At the end of their workday, they then answered questions about how they were feeling. Sure enough, they found that people were more fatigued after keeping their cameras on. And yes, women had it significantly worse than men. Interestingly, the researchers also found this to be true of new employees. So what do women and new employees have in common? Well, both groups tend to spend extra mental energy policing their own behavior and appearance at work because they think or know that their coworkers view them as less competent. They have more to prove. It takes serious energy to make sure that you always look and act the right way. And it's even more exhausting when it feels like everyone is staring at you all the time, as shown in those previous studies. Even if you know logically that people aren't staring at you specifically throughout the entire meeting, your stupid ape brain sees a bunch of people literally staring right at you and it freaks out. And finally, it's even more exhausting when you can see and hyper-focus and hyper-criticize your own mirror image. One issue I have with this study is that it was unfortunately overwhelmingly white. Remember that previous study that found that white people were less fatigued than other races? It's weird that the researchers saw that happen between women and men, and so they drilled down on why women have it worse. They should do the same for why minorities have it worse than white people. I assume that it's going to be the same as with women. Minorities feel a greater insecurity in the workplace. They have more to prove, and so they're going to spend more energy policing their own look and behavior on camera. But, it'd be nice if the researchers would look into it, because it's interesting. So, while I personally think that it's great that so many companies are continuing to allow workers to stay home, it's worth understanding that there are several ways in which this new normal can exacerbate existing inequality. In the meantime, try turning off your camera, or at least turn off the little mirror view if the app you're using allows it, which Zoom does. And of course, before you send out that meeting invitation, ask yourself, could this Zoom be an email?